Hey, what's going on, everybody? How you guys doing? Welcome back to Podio Commentary. My name is Matt Jarbo. Today we're going to be talking about the first episode of Lanterns. I actually do want to go through this episode by episode as the weeks go on because I do feel it's a good show. It's getting a lot of flack. A lot of people are kind of coming out and attacking it for all the reasons you would expect morons on the internet with the inability to understand how television operates, especially prestige television like HBO, and the fact that the show was pitched as basically Green Lanterns meets True Detective, which is like the epitome of the prestige cop detective drama show that you would get from something like HBO. But the show itself is actually really compelling, and it's really good, and it sets up a good mystery for the season. And of course, it ends with a cliffhanger that has a lot of people really upset, actually. And I'm going to touch upon that. So the general premise of the episode is that it's, we meet Jon Stewart when he's a kid, right when Hal Jordan comes out as being Green Lantern. And then we get this really weird scene where like the kids, like Jon Stewart and his brothers, are like watching TV and they're all worried about like someone coming home. And then it's the dad who comes home, and then the dad, like it looks like he's upset at Jon Stewart watching something on TV, and then says like, what's his name? And Jon says Hal something or another. And then they go outside and like William Tell shoots an apple off of his like 8-year-old kid's head. I mean, sure, he asks him, are you afraid? Which is the entire premise of the show. Thematically, that's what they're setting up. But it's still, it was like, oh my God. Like, what? Okay. Oh, sure. And then it just cuts forward to Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart, working together. And you see this play out in the trailer, when they're in the car and they're kind of arguing over the ring. And then Hal's like, okay, there's a taco shop a few miles up the road. I'll see you there, buddy. And then he just jumps out the car and lets Jon figure it out as a car just drives off a cliff in 2016. It just is weird. Like, I'm not saying that it's bad. I'm saying like we see it in the trailer, then you see it in the show and it's good, but it still does feel a little like overtly edgy for the sake of being overtly edgy. But what they have to do in that moment is they have to get the characters up to speed. You know what I'm saying? Like at this point, it's been 2 months that the two of them have been working together. Hal clearly doesn't want to give up the ring. Jon is a little bit too, I don't want to say over eager for it, but he views Hal as being like lesser than him, despite the fact later on in the episode where he actually says, that he respects Hal. So it's a weird, I don't want to say like a father-son dynamic. It's really not that. It's more of like a, I guess maybe like a brotherly dynamic, or something along those lines. I don't want to say like the enemies to lovers trope, because it's really not like that, but it is it's like frenemies to friends. I'm not too sure what they're going to do with it, but that's the vibe that I get. And of course, they're out in LA. In fact, I actually think the opening shot where Jon Stewart gets picked up by Hal Jordan is actually the same bar where they filmed the exteriors for It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I really do think it's the same bar, because they did shoot that opening little bit in Los Angeles, because that's where they were. And then all of a sudden, like a hologram shows up, tells Jon that it's hailing in Nebraska, and then Jon conveys that to Hal, and then Hal just like takes off and flies to Nebraska and leaves Jon to get to Nebraska. It's like, I understand this like testing narrative, right? And the idea there is to show that Hal is kind of like impetuous, but also very much entitled to the position that he has. And he's like just not going to care. And he's like, oh yeah, no, I was testing you to see if you'd be able to make it to Nebraska. Like, okay, right. It shows Jon like jumping on a plane and renting a car and like driving to Nebraska. And it's like, what? For one, like, who is paying for all of this? That's my question. And then at the same time, for a guy who's meant to be like not afraid and reserved and everything else, right? Very stoic. That's the idea Aaron Pierre is bringing to the character. There's a scene even before that where he's walking and he calls his dad, and he's like just bitching and moaning about Hal Jordan to his dad, which is really kind of fascinating, because it feels like, based upon the opening of the show with the dad, shooting an apple off of his kid's head, that they simply did not have that dynamic, but apparently they do. So that, it is what it is. Like that's maybe my minor nitpick with like Jon Stewart as just like a character through the introduction phase. But other than that, I really enjoyed him. I think Aaron Pierre was awesome in Rebel Ridge, and this kind of feels a bit like that performance, and I'm not complaining because I really like it. And Kyle Chandler is great as Hal Jordan. He's pretty awesome. You know, as like an older, weathered, kind of like take no shit kind of guy. I think it works out pretty well for him. And of course, now we get to this massacre at a football game, at a high school football game in the middle of nowhere, Nebraska. 4 people are dead. They're looking over at another guy who ditched his rival team hoodie, and John thinks he's an alien. The sheriff doesn't think he's an alien. They catch the guy. It's a whole thing with like, is he an alien? Isn't he an alien? We don't quite know. But as the episode progresses, we find out that, yeah, he's an alien, but we don't know why he's there. And that scene was kind of cool because it was showing that really John does, or Hal does know what he's doing. He's been around for 40 years doing this job. So clearly, like, it's not like he doesn't have expertise, but for some reason, everyone who knows he's been around for this long is still giving him that like runaround. But then again, this is a small town, you know, middle of Nebraska, not too far away from where he actually was brought to when the Ring chose him all those years earlier. So there's something there that's going to be connected, right? Whatever happened with Hal becoming the Green Lantern is going to tie into this one. If I had to speculate early on, based upon some of the like the you know, the season long trailer, right? Coming soon on Lantern sort of thing. They definitely deal with alien technology. So if I had to guess, it's possible that like the ship was recovered or there was another alien spacecraft nearby. There's a reason why that place was chosen. There's going to be more aliens there. Whatever they want, we're going to figure that one out. And that's the central mystery. That's pretty cool. Obviously, you've got the sheriff mixed up with her lawyer husband and his father, who is this like militia guy who apparently has a boss that is funding something, wanting something. We don't quite know what that is. What I find to be really funny about this, though, is that it does take place in 2016 at the tail end, of Obama's presidency. It is before Trump got elected, and you've got a bunch of white militias that are upset about an invading force. I'm just saying, I mean, I'm not saying that they drew direct parallels, but, you know, Damon Lindelof did work on this, and Lindelof did, write the Watchmen series, which opened with the 1920 massacre, the Black Wall Street massacre, which brought a lot of attention to an actual terrible historical event. So for me, I'm thinking like, there's maybe a little bit of correlation here. You know what I mean? Like there's maybe just a wee bit there, maybe a wee bit, maybe a bit. But you know, ultimately, like I think the characters are compelling enough to want to watch, right? They are yin and yang. They are oil and water. We have to watch them find a way to get along. The only thing that about this, it kind of gets me. Okay, so there's the bar scene. All right. And so, you know, Hal gets himself arrested to go talk to the alien. Fine. That's it's a trope. It's happened before. What I like is that they kind of called it out and they're like, we know what he's doing. So it's actually pretty smart that they're like, it's just not going through the motions. Like they're actually like, yeah, no, let's cause problems. Let's like pile on the shit. Let's make sure he doesn't necessarily get what he wants because he thinks he's the smartest guy in the room. So let's kind of tear that down, which I like. Even though he was ultimately right, they still were aware of the bullshit he was trying to pull, and I like that they countered it. So that was pretty good. But at the bar, Jon Stewart starts talking to this woman, right? And it wasn't like I don't think they really had much chemistry, but then she's like, walk me out to my truck, and then they have sex in her truck. And then she pulls out a cigarette, and she's like, you gonna judge me? And he's like, no, and he uses the ring to light her cigarette. Here's the thing with that. The ring in the first episode was not shown to do much. It did a bottle opener, a $20 bill, and it lit a cigarette. But then at the very end, it, used the ring to kind of contain the bomb that the alien had woven into his skin, bones, flesh, whatever. But they made an interesting point about that. The alien knew about the lantern, or knew about the lanterns, knew about the ring, but knew that John did not, or Hal did not bring the lantern to recharge the ring. And that was interesting. So whatever's going on here, somebody kind of in a higher pay grade is clearly watching, clearly knows what's going on. and was able to kind of set up that particular weakness, because that's what that whole thing was. It was a weakness, right? They don't have the lantern to recharge the ring. Eventually, it's going to run out of power, and House is going to get his shit pushed in. And that's kind of the idea that they're going for here. What I find to be interesting, just again, the characterization stuff, because I'm talking about the whole hooking up with the wife. We find out she is the wife of Garrett Dillahunt, and the bad guy, who is going to be the bad guy of the season. And what's so funny about that, though, is Kelly MacDonald is the sheriff. She's 50 years old. The woman playing the wife is like 53 years old. Garrett Dillahunt is like 61 years old. And like Jason Ritter, John Ritter's son, plays the lawyer, and he's like 49 years old, right? And like, so it's like they're all really close together, but like father, son, like, I don't know, man. Like, I know that they're close enough together in ages to where like, it's a little, I don't want to say bothersome, but it's noticeable, right? It's just that's like the littlest thing right there. Otherwise, I thought it was pretty cool. Now, then, of course, we get to the ending, which takes place in 2026. We find out that Hal Jordan is dead. He's sitting in the same spot he was when he was there overseeing the massacre at this particular high school football team or football field. And, you know, his ring is gone, and that opens up the central mystery of like who killed Hal Jordan and who took the ring. Well, we know that Guy Gardner has the ring, or a ring, from Superman, and we know that he makes an appearance in this as well. So there's a likelihood that maybe he does have the ring. We don't know. Obviously, they're kind of opening the doors, but the central antagonist for this, at least on the cosmic side of it, are going to be Manhunters. And the Manhunters, as far as I understand it, are shapeshifters. And so the shapeshifters are going to be shape-shifting. So just think of it right now of like, is Hal Jordan dead? I'm going to argue, no, he's not dead. I don't believe Hal Jordan is dead. I think this was a shapeshifter, and Hal Jordan is taken somewhere to be kind of removed from the playing field. And, you know, whatever that playing field might be, we're going to find out over the course of the next couple episodes. I'm excited to see more. I think this is really good TV. I actually haven't been this excited for a TV show in a while. So I am definitely like the prime demographic. But one of the things that cracked me up about this was this reminded me, above all else, that the DCU is not for families. It's really not for families. It's for adults. And that's kind of nice, actually, because, you know, it shows you that Gunn knows the demographics, which aren't kids. So if you like Superman comics and everything else, understand that this is not really for you. And I think that's actually part of the reason people are upset about it. So that, to me, is kind of fascinating. But anyway, your thoughts, your opinions, let me know on the episode. What did you think? What are your theories? And we'll tune back in next week to talk more about the episode. Have yourself a great day, everybody. Thank you for watching, and peace out.